$691.4 billion. This is the financial strength of all US nonprofit endowments combined. Now, 20 years ago, if you were to ask someone about the financial performance of one of these endowments, the only statistic that would really matter was your return on investment. But this all changed in 2011 when students from Swarthmore College organized the very first Divest Fossil Fuels protest that gained popularity across all college campuses. People began to realize that endowments are a vehicle for social change and begged the question, will your endowment use your financial strength to promote a positive ESG agenda or refuse change? And that brings us to the question that your university asked of us today, which is, should your university invest endowment funds in this ethically controversial new asset class of cryptocurrency? And today, our team of myself, Matt Cummings, and my colleague Shrika Mensa are super excited to have that conversation with you on how cryptocurrency meets your ethical and financial obligations.
So we'll kick it off by introducing the crypto market, diving into our recommendation, then talking about ethical considerations, our implementation plan, and the economic impacts before concluding. So to introduce the crypto market, the current snapshot of the crypto market reveals that there are over 10,000 active cryptocurrencies. The market cap of cryptocurrency is upwards of 900 billion. There are 300 million active users of cryptocurrency, and 18,000 businesses accept cryptocurrency as a valid form of payment. And concurrent with the growth of cryptocurrency has been university endowments investing in it in various forms, some investing in platforms, some investing directly in coins. However, the question we are here to answer today, of course, is this an ethical decision for your university to make? And today we'll be evaluating that decision based on the ESG framework, considering environmental, social, and governance impacts. And the stakeholders we're considering today are Mother Nature, people at large, the government, and the university, including students and faculty. And that brings me to our recommendation. Today, we are recommending that your university endowment invest 10% of your venture capital exposure into proof-of-stake cryptocurrencies. We'll get into the nuances later, but first, I'm going to pass it off to Matt to talk about the ethical considerations.
So take a look at that first pillar of the ESG model, which is your environmental impact. It's first important to understand how transactions are verified on the blockchain. So there's currently two leading models. The first model, which is proof of work, which we invest in university does not invest in, which it pretty much involves miners competing on the basis of computing power to solve very complex problems. This is an extremely energy-intensive process, and some examples include Bitcoin and Litecoin. Now, on the other side, the other method is proof-of-stake cryptocurrencies, which we do recommend your endowment invest in. And in this model, instead of using that highly energy-intensive process, validators stake collateral to ensure that they're honestly verifying these transactions. And this decreases emissions 99.95%, and some prominent examples include Ethereum. Now, why should you not invest in proof-of-work cryptocurrencies? Well, a September report from the White House indicates that anywhere between 110 and 170 million metric tons of CO2 will be released into the atmosphere as a result of proof-of-work cryptocurrency specifically. That's 0.4% of global carbon emissions, and to put that into perspective, that is more annual CO2 emissions than the entirety of the Philippines. But can emissions improve? Well, for emissions to improve, one of two things needs to be true. Either the infrastructure needs to change, or renewables need to grow. We know the infrastructure will not change. If you look at Bitcoin's improvement protocols, it requires a 51% majority vote across the platform for an infrastructure like this to go to a proof-of-stake model. But because most of the voting power is held by these mining pools, they will never make that change because they've invested so much infrastructure in mining. Now let's look at renewables. Realistically, there's very little empirical evidence to imply that renewables are growing. In fact, in 2021, it's estimated that renewables decreased 25% when China pulled out of crypto mining. And regardless of even if renewables were to go to 80%, this is complete misallocation of renewable infrastructure when a lot of the raw material needs for renewable infrastructure will not be met in the public sector by 2030. So who is actually impacted here? A leading argument is that in that ESG model, the positive S&G benefits to developing nations outweigh those environmental impacts. But realistically, this is a complete miscalculation. When you take a look at the fact that, let's just look at one statistic, in the next 10 years, an increase of 150 million Latin Americans will face water scarcity as a result of global warming. So when you're contributing to 0.4% of that problem, it's an extremely unethical investment. And as a result, your endowment should not invest in proof-of-work cryptocurrencies due to that environmental impact. But like we said, there are still those proof-of-stake cryptocurrencies. I'm going to pass off to Shree to talk about the social impact of those.
It's first important to understand the difference between the traditional financial system and the decentralized financial system that cryptocurrency operates on. In the traditional financial system, there are intermediaries such as investment banks and commercial banks and insurance companies that sit in between transactions. However, in a decentralized financial system, the necessity for these intermediaries is completely diminished, and transactions occur directly between you and your recipient. And why is this important? This is important because this increases the financial inclusion of 1.7 billion people who are underbanked or unbanked, meaning they don't have access to traditional financial products such as bank account. And since the only barrier to entry with cryptocurrency is access to the internet, these people will be able to access it more easily since internet access is a growing priority in developing nations. Next, it allows for the reduction of corruption because there's no central authority figure in a decentralized financial system, meaning no one can take advantage of it. And lastly, cryptocurrency can be used as a strong alternative to weak national currencies during periods of hyperinflation. Another huge benefit is cross-border remittances, which are very important for the socioeconomic development of low and middle income countries, like Guatemala, for example, which gets 10% of their annual GDP from remittances. However, a lot of remittances are eaten up by transaction fees. You can see that 7% were eaten up by US fees in 2020. However, if you were to use a proof-of-stake cryptocurrency like Ethereum, a much smaller proportion would be eaten up by transaction fees, and the rest would go directly into the economies of developing countries. And now let's look at the state of cryptocurrency in India, where crypto is very popular. However, the government has been concerned about how much money is leaving the local monetary system and going into the crypto market. So they've come down with a series of regulations. And while these regulations did cause a decrease in volume of trading crypto in the short run, the long-term projection for crypto remains strong in India at 240 million in 2030. Now let's talk about another group that seeks to benefit from the rise of cryptocurrencies: women. In many countries, women do not have full access to owning property and managing assets. And this is a critical point because decrease in access to managing assets does not allow women to reap economic benefits. And so how does crypto change that? Crypto allows women to be paid for their work and retain their earnings in a safe and secure way. Additionally, it allows them to access financial products such as crypto wallets, which they only need internet for. Beyond that, they can send and receive money through remittances, and remittances are particularly important for women because they're more likely to be on the receiving end. And lastly, there's more available funds to back women-owned crypto startups. And now I'll pass it on to Matt.
So with the growth of cryptocurrency comes rising concerns that the lack of regulation and lack of government is going to have some ethical negative externalities. So I want to address those concerns. The biggest concern is that the anonymous nature of cryptocurrency will lead to an increase in global crime as criminals can hide behind these anonymous transactions. Now, while this is something we do need to monitor, the reality is, in 2021, there was $14 billion worth of illicit transactions, but when you compare that to the total transactions across all crypto networks, that's only 0.15% of all transactions. Now, if you compare that to the US dollar, the IRS estimates that anywhere between 10 to 30% of circulating US cash is currently being used by tax cheats and criminals. So we have to consider this relative to making an ethical investment as an endowment. There's also a myth that cryptocurrency is completely untraceable. And while it is very anonymized, realistically, all these transactions still take place on a public ledger, and while you can't see individual IP addresses, the US government has significantly invested in blockchain technology, blockchain surveillance technology, and the IRS alone was able to use this technology to seize $3.5 billion worth of laundered money in 2021. Additionally, the International Narcotics Control Board recently just came up with a report saying that drug cartels that were originally using cryptocurrency are now resorting back to cash due to these high-profile crime busts. So due to the positive social and governing impacts of cryptocurrency, we recommend that you invest proof of stake as an ethical investment, and we're going to have Shreya talk about those actual financial and economic implications here.
All right, so to lead off with the implementation. Since university endowments are long-term investing vehicles, because you don't need to, you have low liquidity needs, meaning you don't need to pay out the university in the short run, you're able to take on some level of risk proportionate with the size of your endowment. And we can compare crypto to another asset, venture capital, because they have extremely high volatility, both of these assets. However, additionally, they have weak correlation with the equities market. But one area that they differ in is that there's fund capital minimums for venture capital that doesn't allow small endowments to always invest in venture capital. However, cryptocurrency is accessible for all sizes of endowments. And that's why we're recommending you size your crypto allocation to your venture capital risk. So we suggest that you divert 10% of your endowment's venture capital portfolio to investing in proof-of-stake coins like Ethereum.
So what does this look like from an investment standpoint? What is the return on investment? Well, something that's great about the Ethereum network and many proof-of-stake coins is unlike Bitcoin, which really just serves as a currency, Ethereum is powering an underlying blockchain, which is seeing tons of innovation in healthcare, innovation in gaming. And as these innovations continue to grow, that Ether token, which powers the blockchain, is going to continue to rise in demand. Now, how does this help your endowment from a microeconomic standpoint? Well, realistically, those historic 2021 returns you're seeing are not going to be sustainable in an inflationary environment, and that's why Ethereum is a great inflation hedge, because it's actually deflationary at 2%.
And finally, we want to remind you that your endowment spending mostly benefits your university students and your faculty in the form of scholarships, student financial aid, endowed faculty positions, and student programming. And because of that, an investment in ethical cryptocurrency is an investment in your university.
Thank you, and we are opening the floor for questions.
Here's a question. You all, using the environmental, social, and governance ESG framework, argue for or against the investment in endowment funds from the University Foundation for Cryptocurrency?
Yeah, so I think that when you're looking at this from an ESG framework, you really do have to make that separation between your proof of stake and your proof of work cryptocurrencies. When you're looking at the ESG model, while people will argue that in those developing countries, which we talked about, which are facing a lot of those benefits from cryptocurrency, a lot of people will argue that that outweighs that environmental damage, but as we showed, a lot of times that environmental damage is directly impacting those developing communities. So from an ESG standpoint, because of that interconnection between the environment and those economies that are being benefited there, it's important to make sure that we are taking that into account. So we do believe that from an ESG standpoint, those proof of stake cryptocurrencies are going to be an ethical investment because those have those social and those governance benefits for women, for those developing economies. It will impact your university in a positive way. But the thing it doesn't have, that proof of work currencies have, is that it doesn't have those emissions that are negatively harming the world as a whole.